Welcome to the Get It Done podcast. I'm your host, Jimi Ryan. Today we're interviewing Stephen A. Milner. Let's get it done. The Get It Done podcast is sponsored by Team Get It Done. All right, so today we are interviewing Stephen A. Milner. He is the immediate past president of the New York Mortgage Bankers Association. He is the CEO of U.S. Mortgage Corporation. He's the only CEO, mortgage CEO, to be licensed in all 50 states as an MLO and DC. Stephen, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
Thank you, Jimmy. Great to be here. And I've been looking forward to this podcast and sharing whatever you'd like me to share with your listeners.
For sure, brother. Well, we're going to get right into it because you have a pretty incredible story, and I've interviewed a lot of different CEOs of companies, and what I've come to realize is that everyone has just the most unique story, just way to get to where they're at. And right. We tried to record your podcast before we had internet issues. Oh. I mean, it's just I respect your story way too much to have in and outs on audio. So we're just going to be thankful for some good internet. Very good. But look, is there anything that I missed in my brief edification? I mean, here, MBA president, New York, CEO of U.S. Mortgage Corporation, licensed in all 50 states. Anything that maybe I missed?
I'm on the board of directors of Suffolk County Community College, which is on Long Island. I'm also on the Independent Mortgage Bankers Executive Council. I'm one of, I think, about 50 members. It's a great organization, which is an arm of the MBA. Let me see. I'm very active with NAREP, National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, which is a national organization with 40,000 members. And as you said, I'm licensed as an MLO. I think I'm the only CEO in the country that's licensed as a mortgage loan originator in every state, including Washington, D.C. Let me see what else. Past president of New York MBA. You've got that. So,
I mean, just check off the list. It's just, and yes, 100%. There is not one other CEO in America that's licensed in all 50 states for sure. All right. Well, I want to get right into it. And we use, the Get Done podcast is all about overcoming adversity to achieve your dreams. And it's more so about the come up story. We use Elon Musk as an example. He has a great story from making $1 million all the way to making $1 billion. And that's a great story. But what we're really looking at is the 0 to $1 million story, the come up story. And the best place to start that, Stephen, is where were you born? Who are your parents? What were they like? What were the first few years of your life?
Okay, great. Just as a side note, also, Jimmy, I'm also on the board of directors of the TMC, the Mortgage Collaborative, excuse me, which is a great organization, and I highly recommend it.
You're on the board of so many things; it's hard to keep it all straight. I mean, do you have to carry around your resume just to get it all up?
Well, I only sleep 3 to 4 hours a day, so they say it's not healthy, but I've been doing it my whole life, so.
I can only imagine. Well, all right, start us out. Where do we begin your life?
All right, so I like the format, quite frankly, Jimmy, because as I excuse me, when I sit with people for the first time, I always talk about where they have been, in their business and personal life, where they are now in their business and personal life, and where they are going in their business and personal life, no matter who I'm sitting with. And my goal is to focus in on where they are going so I can help them get to where they want to go. That's my focus as the founder and CEO of U.S. Mortgage. That's the way I've been my entire life. And I start my story, I start that dialogue by telling my story first, and this way I can listen to their story. And it doesn't have to be rehearsed because it is what it is, right? And I started off my story simply by saying the following, that no one wakes up one day and they say they wanted to be a loan officer or a mortgage broker or a mortgage banker or in the mortgage business. And I know a lot of people in this business, and no one I know, again, as I said, woke up one day when they're in junior high or high school or after high school saying that their aspiration, their goal, their objective in life is to be in the mortgage banking business. And my story is no different. My parents were from the Bronx. Now, sometimes when I tell my story, I have to sort of relate to the geographic areas throughout the country, because we're all over the country. And some people don't know where the Bronx is or Long Island is. But anyway, the Bronx is a borough of New York. My father was a carpenter. My mother was a civil service employee. And they made very little money. And as a carpenter, my father and mother decided, after they got married, to move to Los Angeles, California, where I was born. And my mother and my father worked on Disneyland as a carpenter. And when I was 7 years old, they put me back in the back seat of a 1949 DeSoto. Most people don't even know what a DeSoto is, but it was an old car that existed in the 40s and 50s. And to this day, I still remember sitting in the back seat saying to Mommy and Daddy, I don't understand. Daddy's been working at Disneyland, and I have never been to Disneyland. Can you take me there? Needless to say, they went back to the Bronx. And to this day, I still have not been to Disneyland. It's really strange when you hear about stories, when you remember stories as a child.
Even I've been to Disneyland, Steve, and I'm from Wisconsin. I mean,
wow, really?
Yeah.
Well, you got one on me, bud.
I went to Star Wars Land, all of that. I mean,
yeah, I've been to Disney World many, many times, but never Disneyland. So we went back to the Bronx. They moved around to a couple of apartments here and there. And then they bought a house in Suffolk County in a community called Brentwood. Brentwood was a Latino community then, and it is now. It's the largest. It was then and still is now the largest Latino Hispanic community in New York State, other than the boroughs of Manhattan, of New York, I should say. And there's 5 boroughs. There's the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan.
I have to imagine that affects your I guess direction later on in life with being part of NowRep.
Yeah, and it still is a very highly concentrated Latino Hispanic community, and I grew up there. Graduated, went to elementary school, junior high school, graduated. I went to college on Long Island, and I got a degree in civil engineering. I've always admired bridges and tunnels and cranes. You know, when I travel around different cities, to this day, I still admire looking at cranes and how they build and how they operate. But anyway, I started working in an engineering firm, but that really didn't work out. You know, I thought I'd have the passion for it, but I did not. And I've always had a passion for mentoring and education. So I went to another college on Long Island, and I got a degree in education.
So wait. So, okay. So you got, we're flying by high school, but it's okay. I'm going to go back to it, but you have 2 degrees. So you have a degree in civil engineering and in education.
I have a degree in engineering. I have a degree in primary education. I have a degree in secondary education, which is grade 7 through 12. And I actually have a PhD in math, which I'll get to in a minute.
Jeez. I mean, okay. Hold on. Okay. That's incredible in and of its own, just that piece. But I want to go back to early years. So like here, we brushed by elementary school and high school, and that's cool. But generally, people have stories from when they're very young. A good friend of mine, Rene Rodriguez, I was just at his event, AmCon in Las Vegas, and he talks about most everything that we do in our lives is to either heal our past or to honor our past. And it's kind of crazy, but when I start to think about it, I kind of could tear up on some things that are very important to me. And I know how important education is to you. Is that something that I think that I'm not 100% sure about? I guess I'm asking the question. Is that something where you got, I guess, a high value for early on in life, or is that something that you came up with later on?
Well, I don't know. I just instinctively, I've always enjoyed just trying to help people, no matter what they're doing. And my philosophy even as the CEO or as a school teacher was simply the following philosophy: if the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. I'll repeat that. If the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. And very often, as a teacher, whether you're a parent teaching your children, or a CEO teaching your managers, or branch manager, as it relates to mortgaging, very often we'll blame the student for not learning. My feeling has always been, even when I was a school teacher, that if my students didn't learn, then I did not teach. And that still is my philosophy today.
That's a great quote. Caption that. That's definitely a great quote, because I think that it's almost like it's a pride thing with teachers, or with leaders or managers in mortgage companies, for that matter. It's just like, look, you expect people to read your mind sometimes, but another friend of mine, Brian Covey, says this is like, look, you got to walk the floor, see what people are actually saying to their customers, help them sell. Don't just like bring down the iron fist after you figured out they did something wrong. Help them, prevent it, type of a thing. We're going to move on from this, but I want to just touch on high school for a second. Is that I always ask people this: what their first jobs were, and what their first car was. I'm genuinely always interested in that, because it's just a weird.
Okay, good. So my first job was cleaning toilets, and when I was 16 years old, for $1, about 80 cents an hour. My first paycheck was $36.
I love 80 cents, not even $1.
No. Oh my goodness. And I was so proud of that job because I was making money. Again, my parents didn't have any. My parents came from very modest economic household, and I got my first sweater when I was in 9th grade, so I came really from very little. My parents had very little money. I'll never forget. It was a cardigan button down sweater that they got at a department store called E.J. Corvette's, which was on a popular store on Long Island. But if I can relate one incident in my early life, as I'm sorry, you asked me what was my first job, and what was the car. The first car was I think in 1956. It was a used car, a Rambler. I don't know if you ever heard of Ramblers, but it was pretty.
What is it? Is that?
It looks like, I don't know. It looks
I feel like that's a Jeep. I feel like a Jeep makes
like it looks like a Jeep, but it was like half the size. But it was exciting to have my own car.
Okay, I love it. So I want to actually, you were going down a path with this, and I actually kind of like the path. So your first sweater was, a cardigan in 9th grade from AJ Corvette's, and that was a big deal for you. I mean,
we didn't have any money, and 9th grade, first year of high school, you got to look cool and fashionable. And my parents got me a sweater. I think it was like $9, but they couldn't afford it at the time, so I was excited when it's interesting as a child, as an adult, how you remember things as a child. Right. One thing that may not be related to the interview, though, to some degree, is the fact that one day I was playing a pickup game of basketball. I was 16 years old, right in front of my house. And at halftime, all my friends sat down on the curb, and they all take out a cigarette and they start smoking. And they said, "Hey, Milner, try this cigarette." And I said, "I don't smoke." And they said, "Well, you should try it. Everybody smokes." So I took a puff on that cigarette when I was 16 years old. They were all sitting on the curb, if you can get a visual image of this. And I almost choked. And then I said to them, "Guys, I want to know, from which orifice does the smoke leave your body? Does it come out of your ears, your nose, your mouth, your backside?" But I didn't say that. Right. I said, "Does it come out of your wee-wee, whatever it came out of?"
Yeah.
And I said, and they all looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, "You can't tell me that smoke, all the smoke doesn't leave your body, that some of it stays in your body." And they all thought I was nuts. They started throwing stones at me. That was the last puff I ever took on a cigarette. 56 years ago it was, yeah.
Wow.
And I
That's,
and I try to really impress good health to my employees, because it's important, and smoking, is not good for you. So I always tell that story when I see people smoking. But I know it's not related to the interview, but it is something I remember as a child when I was 16 years old.
you know what? If you remember it, there's generally a story there, especially all these years later. And that's a great story because here you're literally teaching them a lesson. I mean,
Mm.
and then you become an educator, and you're and I know briefly a little bit about some MLM stuff that you got into with more into health stuff. That's important to you. And I mean, I think a lot of people would have just smoked it and tried to have been cool and fit in. But here
Yeah,
you are saying, "No, screw you guys," and they're throwing rocks at you. I mean, like
yeah,
that's like the truest story of any CEO out there. Like, here, I'm just not going to fit in, but you guys you're wrong,
yeah.
you know. And and of course they were. So okay, so you were cleaning toilets for 80 cents an hour.
Yes,
I
sir.
just I love that. Was that a job that you had all throughout high school, or was that something that
Um,
you moved down?
no, interesting you bring that up. No, I started working at some local stores in Brentwood, like when I got my license, I was able to work in some drugstores and deliver groceries. I mean, not groceries, uh, pharmaceuticals. At that time, we were able to do that, and whatever people want. Whenever some customers wanted some deliveries, I would do that. Um, and that was, and that's probably what I did, and uh, let me see what else. And that was probably, I was just trying to make a living as best I can, and trying to help my parents out. But and then I graduated high school and I started going to college. I took out student loans that probably paid off. Took me about 10 years to pay them off, or whatever the case may be.
Well, with all the degrees, so all right, let's go to college. So all right, we start out with a degree in civil engineering, fascinated with building, cranes, that type of stuff, bridges.
Yes, sir.
What did you get a job in that field while you were in school? I guess what made you go that
No,
route?
I graduated and I got a job as an apprentice engineer in a local engineering firm. Um, but I just realized that I may have liked admiring cranes and roads and bridges, but I just didn't have the passion for it.
Right.
So, I've always enjoyed education, and I enjoyed my experience in school, and I thought, maybe a secure position, one that I like and have a passion for, would be teaching. So I went to another college on Long Island, and I got a degree in in uh, in teaching grades K through 6, which was a provisional certification to teach students from kindergarten through 6th grade, reading groups, changing diapers, the whole thing. And then I got a permanent certification to teach math from grade 7 through 12. And that included algebra, geometry, trigonometry, advanced calculus, all those courses. And I really enjoyed that. And my goal was to become a principal. And to do that on Long Island at the time, you had to have a PhD, you had to have a doctorate in something. So I was pursuing my master's degree, going to school at night, and then pursuing my doctorate degree, which I eventually received. But my goal was to become a principal because there was a much higher level of income as a principal at the time.
So did you, while working as a teacher, did you have any other jobs while you were doing that? Is that when MLM started for you, or was that later on?
MLM?
Multi-level marketing, Amway.
Oh, I didn't get to that yet. No. You want me to get to that?
Well, I've heard like the internet go on and off, so I've like heard that part of the story.
Oh,
So
all right. So let me.
I guess maybe
So
I'm jumping ahead, but
no, no, no.
here,
I'll give you the
transition
back.
us to that because there's I find it hard to believe you were just a teacher.
Yeah. So I was, I was no, I was just teaching. Uh, from 6:30, 6:30 to 2:30, and uh, very often in grade 7 and 8, for 7 and 8 and 9, the principal would assign me kids that were similar to the Sweat Hogs from Welcome Back, Kotter. Remember that show?
I do not.
No?
I do not. No.
Gabe Kaplan and John Travolta was in that, Horshack. A lot of your listeners probably are old enough to know that. But that's what I look like. Gabe Kaplan had a big afro like out to here and a big mustache. And he was a school teacher. And
Oh my
it was called
goodness.
Welcome Back, Kotter,
Who can get me a picture of that? Like, I want a picture of that.
I have one in my office.
Okay, I'm definitely getting a picture of that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
When we promote,
and that's where John Travolta got his start. He got his start sort of in that show, and then he went to Saturday Night Live, Fever, and all that. But yeah. So I was going to school. So I was just teaching. I also played. I forgot to say, I also played semi-pro baseball in the high school, and I was a pretty good center fielder, but that wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to make it to the minors, and so I was really only teaching, making $6,000-7,000 a year at the time, to be quite frank. And then in 1973, I got married, and my wife then was a school teacher in the Bronx, and I was a teacher in Brentwood. Actually, I left out one part. When I started teaching, most students that become teachers get a job in a school district different than the school district that they went to school in. I ultimately taught in the same schools with the same teachers that were my teachers, which is kind of strange.
That definitely, yeah.
That's kind of strange, right? So I was teaching. So I grew up in Brentwood, taught in Brentwood, and I was teaching there for many, many years. Anyway, in 1973, I got married. And my wife then was a teacher in the Bronx, and I was teaching in Brentwood. We had an apartment in Bayside, Queens, and I was traveling back and forth. And then we decided to buy a house on Eastern Long Island in a village called Setauket, which is like, if you know anything about the Long Island Expressway, it's probably 3/4 of the way out on Long Island. We bought a house there in 1977. And then my son, Scott, who's currently the president of U.S. Mortgage, which we'll get into in a minute, was born in 1978. So at that time, my wife and I were making about $15,000 each. So we decided that one of us should stay home. So she stayed home. We went from making $30,000 a year to $15,000 a year. And I've always felt a man has to do what a man has to do. Right. So I decided to do anything I can do to make up for the family income that we lost. And that included taking on jobs such as with the school district, such as intramural coach for basketball, football, baseball, student council advisor, yearbook advisor. I was also given jobs to do home teaching from house to house for those kids that were, that had some issues, if you will. And they paid me $1.25 an hour. Just to be clear, that was 1.25 per hour. And that's what I was doing. And then, as you pointed out before, and then I got involved in these MLM companies, multi-level marketing companies. And the two companies I got involved in was Amway and Shackley. Amway is a company, I still think they're in business, that makes cleaning products. And Shackley is a vitamin company out of Norman, Oklahoma. And the whole thing behind the MLM, the multi-level marketing concept, is that the best customers are the salespeople. So in other words, that's the whole idea. So every closet in my house was filled with either cleaning products or vitamins. That's how the MLM concept works. And I never continued using the cleaning products, but to this day, I still take, what am I up to? 48 vitamins every single day. So I've been doing that for like 40 years. I don't know.
I mean, 48?
48 vitamins, dude.
That's got to be overkill, even for you, Stephen. 48.
I know. I take 25 in the morning with an English muffin, and then 23 at around 6 o'clock.
What? I mean, list those. Like what? Like really?
I have a whole list if you want it.
I mean, I mean, like, my goodness, how could you even list it all out? That's just like
I do. I got
48 vitamins. Well, health is important to what one puff of a cigarette, he's out of here, and I'm having 48.
I know.
vitamins.
I never stop taking them, and I'm hoping it contributes to good health and longevity, but who knows? But you try to do the best you can.
Well, absolutely. So all right. So you're your own best customer at Amway.
Yeah. So, but I wasn't making any money. Your best customer is yourself in the MLM concept, and you're not making any money.
Right.
So I wasn't making any money. So then in 1980, my life changed. I went to refinance my house. I sat down with the loan officer, and she starts completing the 1003 at the time. And a 1003 at the time was one page. It was just a front and a back. It wasn't 7 pages. She's asking me questions about my income. I'm a school teacher, my assets. She's running my credit. She ran my credit report. Keep in mind, in 1980, the end of the 70s, early 80s, the economy in the United States was highly inflationary. Interest rates on a 30-year fixed mortgage was 21%. Adjustables were 19%. And CDs, certificates of deposits, were paying maybe 15%, as opposed to today. What's the CD paying today? Maybe like a half or 1%.
Yeah, like point.
But it was highly inflationary. In fact, New York City was going bankrupt under Mayor John Lindsay and Abe Koch. We were in bad shape, nationally and locally. But I went to refinance my house, and I see what she's doing. And I asked her if this was a commission generated position. She said yes, she gets a commission. And I asked her if she can introduce me to her boss, which she did. So I came back a week later. I sat down with the sales manager at the time, and we started talking about what loan origination was all about. And I asked him if he had any a training program. Again, I'm into education, right? And he says, no, unfortunately, we only provide training to those employees who work full time. And Jimmy, I think at that moment, I made up my mind that if I was ever in a position of leadership, I would provide training to anyone who wants to pursue the mortgage origination business. And I didn't even know the first thing about mortgaging. I just felt it was kind of strange that a sales leader was not willing to provide training to someone new who's getting into the business for the first time.
You know what I gotta say though, Stephen? To this day, it's the same way. I mean, to this day, it's the same way. The majority of mortgage companies do not offer training. My training was, here's the phone in the corner. Go make calls to LendingTree leads, and maybe you can. Oh, you have somebody on the line. We'll figure it out. It's basically that's just. It's a sad truth about our industry, and it should be something that's changed.
Yeah, well, that's not here. I mean, I developed a whole syllabus for new loan officers who want to enter the business, whether they want to do it part-time and full-time. And in fact, I encourage them to keep their full-time job, until they can build their business. And that's what I espouse here, that I want you to try. We're structured where you can build a business within a business at no cost. Anyway, getting past that. So he didn't provide any training. So I asked him for something to read. So he gives me, at that time, keep in mind, there was no internet. There was no CD-ROMs.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you learn from textbooks. So he gives me a copy of the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac seller servicer guides, which were about 4 inches thick.
I mean, that's incredible.
So he said, go ahead and read these. And if you're still interested, come back. So I took them, I came back, I sat down with him, and I said, I think I have an interest in this business. Can you explain to me again what it involves? And he says, well, you try to develop relationships with anyone within your circle of influence who you think could give you a referral, either to purchase a home, a purchase money mortgage, or a refinance mortgage. And he went through some typical examples: realtors, attorneys, financial planners, accountants, and so on. I said, okay. And when they refer a client to you, you'll sit down and you'll begin the pre-qualification process, which includes filling in the 1003 and taking some documentation. He said, you bring it back to me. I give it to my processor and my underwriter. And if the loan closes, you'll make 12 and a half basis points. And the average loan size then was about 100,000. Purchase price in New York on Long Island was about 150 to 175. So he says to me, you're going to make 12 and a half basis points on every loan. So now I have a question for you. So he says to me, Stephen, you're going to make 12 and a half basis points. What do you think I asked him?
I guess, like, I don't know, how many loans can I do? Like, I mean, like, how do I make a ton of money with it? Or is 12 and a half a lot? I don't know. What would you even ask? I'm doing the math. That's not that great. What'd you ask?
He said, you're going to make 12 and a half basis points. So I said, that sounds good, except for one thing. What is a basis point?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Dude, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. I guess
Here I am teaching algebra,
it's our lingo.
geometry. I'm teaching advanced calculus. I'm teaching consumer math. And I never heard the term basis point. So he said, you're going to make 12 and a half basis points. So he went through the quick math. And as you know, 12 and a half basis points is 1/8 of 1%, 0.125. On a $100,000 loan, it would be $125. So I said to myself, if I can close one $100,000 loan in a month, I'm going to make $125. If I can close 2 loans, I'm going to make $250. 4 loans, $500. If I can close 8 loans in 1 month, I'm going to make $1,000. If I can do that every month, I'm going to make about $12,000 to $15,000 for the year. I'm only making about 15 or 16 as a school teacher. So I decided to give up all my part-time jobs, and I started creating some activity just by visiting realtors, attorneys, financial planners, accountants, CPAs, and insurance agents, anyone who I thought was in a position. Simply boots to the street, referral-based business. And my schedule would be, I would be in homeroom, so to speak, from 6:30 to 2:30. Then I would leave school and I would go to those referral partners I just mentioned, possible referral sources within the geographic area of where I was teaching. And I would just knock on doors and start creating some referral activity.
What would you say? So, like, okay, hey, here I am. I'm Stephen A. Milner. I'm just got started.
I just basically said, I'm a new originator, and I'm here to ensure that I'm going to pre-qualify the borrower as best I can to ensure that the loan closes on time. That's basically it. Was a simple pitch, which I've since changed dramatically, but
yeah.
And I started to create some referral activity. However, because they did not receive any training, Jimmy, my first 24 loans that I submitted never closed.
Oh my goodness.
I made $0, not $1. And I thought my wife then was going to stick a fork in each eye. So I had given up all my part-time jobs and I wasn't making any money at this mortgage thing.
How long did it take you to submit 24?
About 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, that's fairly, I mean, I think that's fairly good numbers, actually. If
yeah.
you really think about it. I mean, the closing ratio sucks, but the
submitting. Like up until 1981, because I started in like end of 80. Yeah, probably 6 or 7 months. That's a good question. But, I was getting frustrated, but I've always believed in persistence overcomes resistance. And I went to another mortgage company in Queens, which was 50 miles from where I lived. And I started to write some business, and I received some more mentoring and education. And I started to make some money. And I started to close some loans, 3 loans a month, 6 loans a month, 8 loans a month. Now, I must back up a little bit. As I said, in 1980, the 30-year fixed mortgage was 21%. What many people in the business do not realize is that single digits on the 30-year mortgage did not hit the marketplace until 1992. So for the entire decade, 1980 and 1991 and 1992, mortgages were at double digits, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'll never forget in 1992, later on when we got to 9.99%, there was like a party in the streets because we had single digits. Anyway, I started to close some loans and all purchase money, very little refi. And again, the average loan size started to increase on Long Island. By 1986, I was closing 30 loans a month myself with
Wow.
no loan officer assistant, just myself, working around the clock and teaching and going to school at night. And by 1986, I was closing 30 loans a month, and I had just gotten my doctorate in a PhD in mathematics.
So stay here for just a second. What was it like to close a loan back in 1986? So for me, for instance, I started in 2007. And by the way, Stephen, I'm freaking senior in this industry, doing this for 15 years.
14 years, dude. Yeah.
But you're talking about the 86. And I guess here, what was it like to close a loan? 10 here to do 10 a month, I think is a great amount to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get to that point. But to do more than that, and with no loan officer assistant, I mean, is this just as simple as you collect all their docs, you review it yourself? Are you self underwriting it? What is the actual process?
That's basically it. Yeah. I mean,
and you have signature authority, and in a sense, you approve the loan.
No, I just originated the loans.
Did a good job, and
I became a student of the business. And that's what I teach today, is that if you're going to build a business within a business, then you have to become a student of the business. I still profess that. And there's ways to do that. And we have many ways in which we help our employees to learn the business. It's not just a matter of filling in the IRLA. There's a lot more to it. But so I would take the 1003 at the time. I would complete it. I would get all the necessary documentation. And I guess in my own way, I wanted to make sure that loan was going to be underwritten properly. To this day, my philosophy is that a loan should be originated in such a way that it becomes a novella. It tells a story. It must be able to tell a story to a person who was, i.e., an underwriter who was not sitting at the kitchen table. And that's my philosophy. That's how a loan should be originated, where it tells a story so that someone, a stranger, can interpret that story. So anyway, decided at 1986, I was offered an opportunity finally to become a principal because I met the PhD requirements. But I was also offered an opportunity to open up a mortgage brokerage company with two other gentlemen. I decided to pursue the mortgage brokerage opportunity. I gave up teaching. I lost my New York State teacher's retirement because I was not vested. I lost my benefits. I lost everything, but I felt I really wanted to become an entrepreneur. And not to be political, but God bless America, where we're living in a country, unlike some other unfortunate people, whether you're talking about Ukraine or people in Europe or whatever the case may be, in South America, anywhere in the world, where you don't really have an opportunity like we have in the United States to become an entrepreneur, to build your own business. And I embraced that. And I opened up a mortgage brokerage with two other gentlemen in Bayside, Queens. My two partners worked the boroughs. I worked Long Island. And at that time, when you acted as a mortgage broker, you didn't really even process the loan. You took the 1003, you collected the documents, and then you sent it off generally to a depository, not so much an IMB investor. You sent it off to a depository like Greenpoint or Williamsburg or Citibank or Chase, whoever it was, underwriting loans for mortgage brokers.
Wow. And
you didn't process anything. They ordered the appraisal. They sent out the disclosures. They ordered the appraisal. They did everything. And at that time,
easy. That sounds so easy. I mean, like, shoot, you just get a
name. You didn't do anything.
Fill it all out and throw it in.
You just threw everything into a fax machine.
Yeah.
At the time. And we were close. That was in 86. By 1987, we were probably closing 125 to 150 loans a month, the three of us, with as a company. actually, because we hired a few more salespeople, but we were making more money. I was making more money than I ever thought possible, quite frankly. And then, so we had one office in Bayside, Queens, and then we opened up a satellite office for me on Long Island because I was living all the way out in Eastern Long Island, and all my business was in Nassau and Suffolk County. And then we opened up a small satellite office. But Jimmy, wanted to become a banker. They wanted to stay a broker. So we started to have serious discussions about a difference in philosophy and which way the company should go. 1992, 1993. Finally, in 1993, I said, look, you guys can stay as a mortgage broker. I want to become a banker. So we split up at the end of 1993, December. And on February 17th, 1994, I founded and opened up U.S. Mortgage as it is today, as a mortgage broker. And we just celebrated our 28th year, which I'm very proud of.
I mean, that's incredible. Congratulations.
I've had no partners. I'm 100% owner of the company. And we started out as a mortgage broker, opened up a small office on Long Island. And we were doing just purchase money in Nassau and Suffolk County. I started to grow a sales team. And my goal was to become a banker. So, and yet, as you know, you had to have a certain net worth. And I was accumulating my assets so I can meet the net worth requirements. And it took me about 2 years to get approved. And I think I was one of the first mortgage brokers in New York State that was approved as a mortgage banker. It's
Why was it good back in the day? Because, I mean, it seems so easy to broker it based on what you're saying. I mean, what would be the benefit other than the fact that you can just say that you're a banker?
Well, the benefit has always been to me is that I'm originating the loan, I'm processing, I'm underwriting, I'm closing, I'm funding it, I'm using my funds, I'm taking the risk. The reward is greater, but I just felt it was a much easier sell to a consumer that I am actually lending the money. I am the lender.
Right.
Not to take anything away from mortgage brokers, but
it's a different business.
It's a different business, and that's what I wanted to do. And I felt that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to ultimately be a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie seller servicer at some point. I was thinking ahead. Anyway, and to this day, there's many IMBs that are licensed in every state except New York. New York is very challenging to get licensed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I got licensed, and we started to create some business. I started to write some business, and then at the end of the following is going to be related to a point you were making at the beginning of this session. At the end of the 1990s, early 2000s is when the subprime mortgage products hit the marketplace. That's because federal government wanted to raise the rate of home ownership from 63 to 73%. So the Treasury Department endorsed the creation of these subprime liar loan products, as they were called, which became very popular from the late 90s through the early 2000s. And as we know, those products eventually resulted in the Great Recession, which ultimately was caused by the housing bubble and so on, as they call it. Now, my philosophy has always been that a borrower must demonstrate the ability to repay the loan and the willingness to repay the loan. Unfortunately, those products did not require that the borrower demonstrate the ability or the willingness to repay the loan. Right? We all know that.
It's crazy. I know.
And I've always felt, and our mission here, which I think is right behind me over here, is that our mission statement here has always been that I've always felt that everyone is entitled to a roof over their head. However, and I was the first to say it in the late 90s, early 2000s, I believe everyone is entitled to a roof over their head, but not everyone is entitled to a mortgage. And I think if the Treasury Department had that philosophy in mind, they would not have supported the creation and the securitization, if you will, of the subprime mortgage products. And we would not have had the recession. If a borrower cannot demonstrate the ability or the willingness to repay, then maybe they should be it should be recommended to them that they rent for a while, save their money, establish a secure salary position or self-employed position. But that did not occur. So I came to a crossroads in my career, which I think you were alluding to at the beginning, is that I made a major decision not to do any of those loans as a banker. Now, at that time, the average loan size, let's say, it was about 300,000 by 2000, the year 2000. So as a banker, you made anywhere from 6 to 8% on those loans. So simple math, $300,000 loan, you made $18,000 to $24,000. And at that time, prior to the LO comp requirement, which was established in April of 2011, pursuant to the CFPB requirements, actually pursuant to Dodd-Frank, loan officers were paid a percentage of the gross revenue prior to the LO comp rules being established in April of 2011. So if a mortgage company did a subprime loan and made $18,000, they would generally give the loan officer 30 or 40 or 50% revenue commission based on a percentage of the revenue, which averaged about 40 to 50%. So a loan officer on $18,000 gross revenue would make $8,000 to $10,000, right? But I stayed away from all of that because I just didn't feel that those products. I did feel those products would create a housing bubble, would cause a recession, and I made a crucial decision to do those loans only as a broker. And instead of making 6 to 8%, I made 2%. So on a $300,000 loan, instead of making $18,000, I made $6,000. The loan officer thusly would only make $3,000 instead of $9,000 or $10,000, and therefore I lost salespeople.
Wow,
that was a crucial decision.
I have to imagine too that other people in the industry, just in general, other executives, principals, were probably looking at you like you're nuts. How come you're not collecting the cash?
They did. So did my salespeople. They went down the blocks at some of my competitors. The competitors of which overnight went out of business as their repurchases were requested, if you will.
Yeah.
Literally overnight, over the weekend, securitization ran out. There was no price available for the loans. They had to buy back those loans. Those loans did not perform. Why? Because a borrower did not have to demonstrate the ability or the willingness to repay the loan.
And they didn't want to.
Simple. It's not complicated.
Yeah. It's so easy. But hindsight's always 20/20, and I think that back in those days, everybody was just so money hungry, and it was just so easy. Wow. I mean, you could do 10% of the work. I remember that. I remember one time I would mistype. I mistyped somebody's assets as I missed the comma, and I said that they had $1 million in the bank, as opposed to like 1,000 or 10,000. Well, when you did that, it would pop a special thing in an approve eligible where it says, "Hey, congratulations! You don't need to document anything. They have $1 million. Don't even prove it. Like, it's all good." And it's crazy to think that was even around in 2007, 2008. You know, I mean, it was still
crazy,
and probably even 2009. But
but listen, I've always felt that the needs of the corporation outweigh the needs of Stephen A. Milner. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Right. And that's why I made that decision, because I really felt that I did not want to be a casualty mentioned on the implodometer. Remember the implodometer?
I do. That's when I started. See, when that was on, I was getting into the mortgage industry, whereas people are looking at me like I'm nuts.
Yeah. Anyway, I stayed away from those products. That was a major decision. And that many mortgage companies were going out of business. I think in 2007 I came to another crossroads in my professional career. I think in 2007, many people were getting out of the business. And I think in October of '07, as a company, we closed 6 loans.
Wow. That was my
And I
first.
had
That
I
was my
had two
first month in the
opportunities.
business, by the way.
What's that?
That was my first month in the business, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it was really challenging, and it was scary. And I had two choices. I had a choice to either shut down, start something new, or reinvest in the company and become a national lender. I elected to do the latter because I've always been very concerned about my employees. Many of my employees over the last 28 years have been with me 10, 15, 20, 25, 27 years, and my goal as an employer, and I'm very upfront when I meet employees, is to tell them that my objective has always been to serve as an employer for life. That's my DNA. That's how I am. And if an employee leaves, I get kind of emotional over it because I really question if there was anything I or one of my managers could have done differently to retain that employee. Anyway, I decided to recapitalize the company. I wrote out a check for $3 million back into the company. And then in 2008, the SAFE Act was passed, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
SAFE Act was passed, the Secure and Fair Enforcement Act was passed, requiring loan officers to become licensed. At that time, prior to that, they just had to be registered with the state-specific banking department that they were doing business in. And the licensing requirements, as they are today, was to do the following. They had to take 20 hours of federal pre-licensing education. They had to take 3 to 8 hours of state-specific education. Then they had to take the national exam and get 75%. Then they had to take a state-specific test. In 2013, the CFPB dropped the requirement for the state test. So now you just have to take the 20 hours.
And the UST.
They have to take the state education, then you have to take the national test.
The
So
UST,
I decided if my goal was to become a national lender, if I wanted U.S. Mortgage to become a national mortgage banking entity, you had to have a licensed designee who's licensed in the states that you want the corporation to become licensed in. I basically then made a decision to volunteer myself to become that licensed designee, which required that I take the 20 hours, that I take the state-specific education, that I take the national test, and that I take the state-specific test. Now, back then, when you took the state-specific test, you had to go to a testing center in the state. So I had to fly to different states to a testing center and take the state test. No, you no longer have to take the state test. Anyway, and I started doing that in 2008. By 2010, I became licensed as an MLO in every state, including Washington, D.C. And to this day, I still maintain 51 licenses, including D.C. I do my own continuing ed starting in June, because you have to do it in like 33 states. And it's about 8 hours in every state, give or take. And by 2010, my son Scott came on board, which I'll share that story with you in a moment. And then in 2000 and actually he came on board in September of 2010, but in July of 2010, the Dodd-Frank Act was passed. And one of the first things they required was that by April 2011, as I said before, they required that LO comp be paid, that compensation to LOs be paid on a fixed amount, that it could not be based on terms and conditions of the loan.
Or
And
profitability.
also, I throw in January of 2011, that same year, is when the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was established to enforce the Dodd-Frank Act. So as far as my son, if I can digress for a moment on that, he was born in 1978, and then 1996, he graduated high school. And he had worked in the summers with me, you know, doing copy packages and stuff. So he graduated high school and he said to me, Dad, you know, there's really no sense for me to go to college. Why don't I just learn the business? You can teach me the business. You can save all that money and I can join the company. So I said to him, just like this, Jimmy, I said, dude, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to go to college and I'm going to pay for it. Number two, you're not going to come to join my company until you can bring something to my company. I said to him, just because we share the same last name does not mean that you're going to come into my company and possibly ruin what I work 18 hours a day for. He was kind of upset. And I explained to him that there's horror stories that you hear all the time about children who enter their parents' company and they ruin the business. And there's been a number of them on Long Island when that occurred. And he embraced what I said. He went to Boston University in the School of Management in 1996. He graduated in 2000, and he became a very successful investment banker on Wall Street, creating equity derivative products. He would create the product, create the market for it, create the price, and he would sell them to registered investment advisors all over the country, RIAs.
Wow.
But during the recession, as the mortgage business was just in upheaval, and I was expanding the company, attempting, pursuing becoming a national lender, I would visit with him. We would go out to dinner anyway, but the main focus of our conversations was the business itself. And quite frankly, sometimes in our personal and our business relationships, it's better to talk to people who are not involved. Sometimes they give a better objective opinion about what to do and how to handle certain things
100%.
when they're not, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
When they're not directly involved in the situation. So, and he's very objective. He's got a very high EQ, emotional quotient, as it's called. And in 2010, he made a decision to leave a very successful career, and he joined the company in 2010, September of 2010, and he became my executive vice president and ultimately became the president of the company. We have a wonderful relationship. I'm very much focused on education and training and mentoring. As I said, he's very much focused on the secondary marketing and accounting and technology. He runs our business intelligence team, our LOS team, and he's very involved in that. So we really complement each other very well. He's a great guy. And so anyway, he came on board and we started to just expand our retail footprint throughout the country. We got our Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac approval as a seller servicer. We do a lot of reverse loans, renovation loans. We do non-QM loans. We do the whole thing. And as I said, we celebrated our 28th year. But the thing that I am most proud of, which I must say, is that as a loan officer, as a CEO, I wear my CEO hat all day long, but I also wear a team leader hat. And I still originate myself at least 20 loans a month, every month, all self-source, boots to the street, referral-based business. And I like to talk about, and I'm very proud of that. And the whole advantage of doing that is that it really keeps me in touch with the assembly line, with the manufacturing process. I'm very sensitive to what loan officers are going through, their challenges, their frustrations at the kitchen table.
Right.
We all have them.
Right.
But if I'm experiencing them, then they must be experiencing them.
Right.
And that really helps cure some issues.
I think that too. I think that as a leader or manager or executive, principal, whatever you want to call it, somebody that oversees people, we have a tendency to rule from our golden armchair. And, we have no perspective. We're just dictating, hey, do it this way because back in 1986, I did it this way. Well, yeah, I did it in 1986, but I'm also doing it in 2022. I think it's difficult to respect a manager that's not actually doing it. It's someone who's just personally experienced that. It's difficult to relate to someone that isn't in the arena, actually fighting for it.
I agree.
And I think that's admirable. And 20 loans a month? What's up? What's up,
20 loans a
Steven?
month.
What's up, Steven? I mean,
I have my own team. I have my own support team. And I create referral activity no matter where I go throughout the country. I'm always asking people for business. U.S. Mortgage is strictly retail. We don't do wholesale. We don't do correspondent. And one thing I also brag about, for lack of a better description, is the fact that U.S. Mortgage is not going anywhere because my son is here. There are many companies, especially in the M&A activity that's going on now in the last 2-3 years and continues to occur.
right.
That there are many companies, especially where the CEO or the owner is my age, so to speak. They're looking to get out and cash in their
Cash in, right?
cash in their
Public.
chips. But I have no desire to do that, especially with Scott here. And I tell people that. I said Scott's going to carry on the legacy of U.S. Mortgage for another 50 years. And some people live to work. Some people work to live. Working to live is budgetary in nature. You have to feed your family, which I understand. Living to work is where you develop a passion for what you do, no matter whether you're in the mortgage business or any other business. And I feel that as an employee, your goal should be to get to the point where you live to work. And when you get out of the shower every morning, even in this remote environment where many people may not be taking showers, but anyway, when you do, you should be thinking about developing a passion. You must have a passion for what you do every day, no matter what it is. Working to live is understandable. I get it. You have to make money. You have to feed your family. And I've always lived to work, no matter what I've done, especially in the mortgage business. My goal is to make U.S. Mortgage better than the day before, no matter how minute that may be. And
Brother, I love that. I mean, and that's a perfect segue to our final questions that I ask. And look,
okay.
we've spent some time here, and I want to be super respectful of your time. But there's 4 questions that I ask everybody, Steven, on the show, and I want to make sure that I get these out.
Okay.
So, first one is this: do you feel like you've ever got a big break?
A big break. Trying to think, a big break, that I don't know. I'm trying to define what that is.
I love the silence that you can't even find one. You know what? I mean, it's really funny because I know some people have had trouble hearing what I mean. Like a big break. Like, hey man, I had this huge big break. I asked Barry Habib the same question. He's like, like what? Well, what do you mean? What's a big break? and the thing is that I'm just thinking about scrubbing toilets for 80 cents.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, what's the big break?
I think my big break is when Scott decided to come on board. I think if he had not come on board during the transition period of the industry, dude, many companies went out of business, man. You have to trust the people and we have an outstanding senior management team that have been with me 15 years on the average. But I was very fortunate, to be quite frank, that my son Scott decided to come on board. He didn't have to. He was doing outstanding as an investment banker.
Well, right.
And I think I would consider that a break.
Absolutely. No, it's good. Well, we found one.
Well, we did.
No, that's great. Okay, cool. All right. So the next question is, if you were to do it all over again, Steven, what would you change?
If I were to do it all over again, what would I change? I think wow, I got to think about that. What would I change? I think I probably would have wanted okay, so We got our GSE light approvals in, I think, like 2011. I probably would have wanted to get them a little earlier. After I became a banker in 96, I think 97, I could have pursued it then. But, as you sell it off to the GSEs, you're losing revenue, that you hope to retain, that you hope to recoup as, rates start to go up and you have a higher retention factor. But I embrace selling loans to the GSEs, and servicing loans. But I probably would have wanted to maybe do it a little sooner.
I mean, that's fair. I love it. Become a seller servicer.
Or a little earlier than I was. We got it in, I think it was 2011 and 2012.
Well, it was also harder then too, because a lot more people were going into it. It was the same thing with like Ginnie or FHA full Eagle approval, for instance. Like
that we got right away.
Yeah, like
that we got right away, but not the GSEs.
But okay, perfect. So next question. Was there ever a time, Stephen, you felt like giving up?
That what?
That you felt like giving up?
No. I've always, as I said, I always believed in persistence overcomes resistance. There was a time, as I mentioned earlier, that in 2007, I think in October, we did 6 loans in the month of October. And, and I still felt then that this was a great business. I just have to change my business model. And I had to create a new playbook, so to speak, which required that we become licensed and we become and we embrace the objective collectively as to become a national lender. And that's what we have become.
I love it. Basically, no. And matter of fact, at the time when I started to feel like it, I dug in more. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a good question, though.
All right, so final question to set it up. So there's a young Stephen out there. Maybe they've never been to Disneyland. Maybe they grew up with a carpenter and a civil service employee, mother and father. Maybe they're, driving a 1956 Rambler around.
Smart guy.
Maybe they're transitioning to starting a family and mom's staying at home. They're going from $30,000 to $15,000. Maybe they're struggling with multi-level marketing. Maybe they're just getting started and making their 12.5 basis points. Maybe they're submitting 24 loans and none of them close. What advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
To get into the business?
To get it done, just in general.
My advice, which I go through all the time, is simply you have to become a student of the business. And even here, I meet people like that all week because that's part of what I like doing. I really embrace those kinds of situations that you're explaining, that you're describing. And I'm pretty good at the business in terms of creating a business within a business. And I'm a good mentor with that, I must say. And I've developed what I call the 5 Milner commandments of loan origination. A loan officer must learn to do the following and become a student of the following. They must know how to sell, how to qualify, how to take an application, how to follow up with their pipeline, and how to market themselves. Again, sell, qualify, take an application, pipeline follow-up, and market themselves. And they must become a student of each one of those. And I spend a great deal of time, effort, and energy with people that you just described, teaching those 5 Milner commandments, as I call it. And I have a syllabus on each one of them, to be quite frank. And I feel that if someone is committed, I can help them become very successful. I just want to add one little point.
I love it. Go ahead.
In 1980, I sat down with that manager who said there was no training. He was telling me about the business. I get in my car, I'm going home. And the following occurred to me, that a salesperson, no matter what they are selling, has to create three needs with their consumer. They have to firstly create a need for the consumer to feel confident that the salesperson they are dealing with can deliver the product or service that they're looking for. The second need that you have to create in the consumer is the need for the consumer to feel confident in the company that the salesperson works for, to the extent that they're going to deliver the product or service. Right? You're a consumer.
Right. Absolutely.
The third need you have to create with the consumer is the need for the consumer to use the product or service. So it's the need, you have to create a need for the consumer to feel confident in the salesperson, him or herself. You have to create the need in the consumer to feel confident that the company they work for is going to deliver the product or service. And then you have to create the need for the product or service directly. You're a consumer, right? So when you're dealing with a salesperson, you want to have confidence that that salesperson is going to deliver what you want, and that the second need is that you want to feel confident that the company that that salesperson works for is going to manufacture the product or service. And then you have to really create the need for you have to feel confident that that salesperson has to create the need for the product you want. I'm driving home and I realized right out of the gate, even though I couldn't spell mortgage, that 33% of my job was done already, because I did not have to create the need for the product or the service. I just have to create a need to work on my sales skills related to creating the need for Stephen A. Milner and the mortgage company I was working for at the time. I'm sure you can relate to that, because if a
100%.
consumer is going to contract to buy a house, unless they're buying it in cash, there's a mortgage contingency. They need a mortgage. They're either going to come to me or they're going to go down the block, right? Same with a refinance, whether they're doing a rate and term or cash out, whatever the case may be. The need for the product is already established. And here I am driving home that night after my meeting, and I said, wow, I just have to work on myself, and I have to feel confident that the company is going to be able to deliver the service and the product, and the product. But I didn't have to create the need for the product. The need is there already. So that's what
we sell money. We sell money. You know, I mean,
the need is there.
And you need it. Yeah, right, for sure.
So I always try to stress that to people that I speak to, and
in here, I guess to put a nice bow on it, I would close with this: is persistence overcomes resistance.
Well, always in life.
Stephen A. Milner. Well, all right. I want to thank our audience for joining us today. I especially want to thank Stephen A. Milner for coming on the show. And Stephen, if anybody wanted to reach out to you to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
My email and my my cell phone. I'll give you both.
Go spit them out. We're going to put them in the podcast description.
All right. All lowercase on my email, Stephen with a V, .A.Milner. That's M as in Mary, ILNER, MILNER, at US Mortgage, all one word, lowercase, .com. No dots in US. Stephen.A.Milner at usmortgage.com. My cell number is 516-330-5758. 516-330-5758. I also have, you can call me on my office line, which is 631-750-0500. 631-750-0500.
Love it, brother. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on. And hey, to our audience out there, if you've taken some value from today and you want to support the show, open up your iPhone and tap that 5-star button, write us a review, tell a friend, hit that subscribe button. All those things make a huge difference in helping us reach more people. Once again, I'm Jimmy Ryan. This has been the Get It Done podcast. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jimmy.